full test of the hybrid system.
We'll say,
I taught this way for a year, so when there were cameras in the room, there were microphones, and some students were supposed to be home, and some were supposed to be in class, but it really was, everyone was home, and one student was in class. So it was odd.
And where were you?
I had people.
You had to be there.
Oh, yeah, when one of the professors asked the provost, well, you know, if the students get to choose whether they're home or in class, shouldn't the professors have that option? And he said, you're like fast food workers. People have to come into the restaurant, so you've got to be there and man the cash register.
Well, I will be in order, and we'll move into our first item. Oh, we did the pledge?
Yeah.
It's not on the agenda.
we're here and there's a pledge.
All set. The pledge of allegiance. So virtually, so like, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I should have mentioned that this is our first in-person meeting since, I guess we had two in between, or one.
I think we had one.
We had one meeting since March of 2020, and this is the first one with our two new trustees. So hopefully it's sounding good, and we all look great, which we always do in person. But along those lines, speaking of looking great, we're going to move right on to a presentation by Sustainable Westchester regarding Westchester Power, and now we're really going to test the hybrid model. Larry's
Okay.
There you go.
All right, so Nick is on from Sustainable Westchester. Hopefully you can hear us.
Yeah,
And
I
hopefully we
can.
can hear you. So
Can we make him louder?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Okay.
all right, so you're on. We can see you and we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks for having me. Oh. So I think you all should be able to see my presentation now, hopefully.
Yep.
All right, perfect. So yes, my name is Nick Tedrow. I am the program manager for the Westchester Power program here at Sustainable Westchester. So thank you for having me. Here to talk a little bit about the program. And I think I heard there were two new trustees who maybe aren't familiar with our organization or program, so I'll give some background about that and then talk about where we're headed as we're approaching the end of a contract here at the end of June. So just briefly, Sustainable Westchester, for those who don't know about us or maybe just need a refresher, we're a nonprofit consortium. Our members are the municipalities in Westchester County, 44 of the 45 anyway, and that includes Westchester County itself as a member. And this is just a snapshot of some of the various programming we offer as this sort of suite and vision of services we're bringing to the county in order to try and build a healthy and sustainable future for our community and our future generations. So we're here to talk about the community energy portion here. Just as a little heads up, I guess, we are getting ready to hopefully roll out our opt-out community solar credit program. So this will be a solar credit offering through the Westchester Power program that's going to be able to provide guaranteed savings for participating households and small businesses on their electric bills. This initial launch, rollout, whatever you want to call it, when it does come into effect, will prioritize low to moderate income households. So starting with people who are in existing utility low income assistance programs, what are known as assistance program participants generally. So if this is something that piques your interest and you want to make sure you're positioned to maybe take advantage and be a participant, the first step is to amend the CCA enabling law at your municipal level to add the solar credit that accompanies our supply offering through Westchester Power. So we have a template that's prepared for you all, and you may have already got it, I don't know, from the solar team, but if that's something you're keen on, we can definitely make sure to get that in your hands as soon as possible. And you can always feel free to reach out to our solar programs director, Leo, whose contact information is there at the bottom with questions about that as we go along. Anyway, Westchester Power, we are a CCA, a community choice aggregation, as it's known in the legal sense. And of the 44 participating municipalities in Westchester County and that are part of Sustainable Westchester, 29 of those, with the inclusion of Yonkers starting this month, 29 total cities, towns, and villages, roughly 145, 147,000 accounts between residential and small businesses participate in our electricity supply program. So just a little overview here for folks who maybe aren't familiar about electricity generation and supply. Your electricity has to get generated from some source within the state, and then all of those different generators contribute, deposit their electricity generation into the grid, where a lot of that is managed by Con Edison, who delivers and maintains the lines and gets it delivered to your home, where you, the customer, have the choice about where your energy is actually sourced from and where you're choosing to buy your energy from an origin point. So, and then Con Edison still bills you in any variation of that. So we, as Westchester Power, supply 100% renewable hydropower through New York State Hydropower as our primary offering and purpose here to promote clean renewable energy adoption in the state. So this is an opt-out format, this program. So what that means basically is folks who are eligible through our few criteria pieces automatically get enrolled into the program. So it functionally operates the same way as Con Edison, where when you set up your account, your service account with Con Edison, they just started giving you electricity on day one, and that electricity was their supply. So similar to that, this is actually now the first time where folks who are in that bucket that don't go navigate the ESCO world have an alternative option for their electricity supply that's free to bounce in or out of. So, communities like Irvington residents who, or like you all at your level, voted to enable this program now have that decision about what their default supply is. And that's the first time really that there's been a choice, as I mentioned. So, we're an approved alternative. We take the confusion out of navigating that ESCO world and private company contracts, and we're a really cost-effective means of bringing renewable energy into the community. So, and this opt-out structure is important because it enables us to leverage the full buying power of our communities. So when we go and do our auctions and secure supply contracts, we have a really attractive and powerful consumer base that we're going and doing those solicitations with. So in terms of the mission-oriented stuff, here's sort of the general or estimated impact we have so far as a county. 1.1 million metric tons of CO2 mitigated. Irvington itself, 25,000 of that, and you can see the sort of the translation here that are more tangible terms about what that has meant in terms of impact, and that's an EPA calculator thing that gives that estimate. So not insignificant, and it grows every year with the more years we run this program, the more people who join, and we're making a really big impact in the county. So yeah, in terms of the current contracts for supply, we, as I mentioned, are coming to the end of the current one. June 30th, 2022 is when the current rates expire. So we have two rates for folks who aren't familiar. We have the 100% renewable supply, as mentioned, which is the default offering, and is obviously the primary purpose of why we do this program, to promote the renewable energy. But we also have a standard supply, which is basically your market offering fossil fuel mix that's more cost effective, and especially in these times, that's an important offering to have for folks too. So, as mentioned, maybe or maybe not mentioned, Con Edison has a variable rate month to month, so we don't know, what they're going to be, if they're going to be higher or lower than us, and we have a fixed rate, so we don't guarantee savings to anybody because of that. We'll talk about the cost comparison over history here in a second, but also remembering that our renewable supply isn't apples to apples for Con Edison supply, since it's the renewable energy and there's a premium associated with that. So looking at the standard supply to the Con Edison would be the more comparable analysis. And then just again about the program, it's opt out, as I mentioned before, but you can opt in, opt out anytime you want, or switch between the two supplies. No contracts, fees, or penalties for anybody to do that. This is really a service that's available to residents to use or not use at their wish. And the fixed rate is a cap that they can rely on for cost security going forward and assurance about what they're going to get charged month to month. So this is a look just at the picture from our inception in 2016. You can just see those vertical blue bars are Con Ed over time. And then our horizontal bars are the renewable and standard supply. So if we do the penciling out, we've been cost competitive for sure, if not better since our inception, actually. And this big scary bar, I'm sure everyone got an incredible January bill from Con Edison. So that's what that's representing there, and is an indicator of where things are at in the market right now. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. But just to do one more sort of look at the current contract and how our rates have performed so far from January 1st of last year to February of this year, we can see the average kilowatt hour usage by customer type there, and then just what the total cost charges would have been over that time against those average usages month by month, all rolled up. So actually, the renewable even was been a little bit cheaper than Con Edison supply. Obviously, that last January month had a lot to do with that. So on the average, it's actually been a really cost competitive and frankly maybe a bit better price option for folks too. And then of course the standard quite a bit better. All right, so I will jump into Westchester Power 2.0 here and how we're sort of evolving, but if there are a couple of trustees who aren't familiar with the program, I can stop there and just talk about the program maybe generally if there's any questions or anything. Otherwise, I'll
I'd
just,
love to hear the background.
Sorry.
A little background.
Yeah,
a little more background.
sorry. As one of the new people, I would appreciate some background. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. I'm gonna try and make you all bigger on my screen because you're just kind of like four really tiny humans that I can't see. All right. I think it was tiny human on the back somewhere. Yeah. So Westchester Power, we started running this program in 2016. So had.
Travel or something.
Are you having a hard time hearing me?
You're a little bit muffled, but we're not sure if it's you or how we're.
Is this better?
No.
No.
It may not be you. You can keep going. I'm going to try it. Well, I can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, feel free to just shout at me if I'm not coming through, and I'll stop talking. So Westchester Power, we've been operating this program since 2016. I don't know, I can't remember how many charter members we had right off the bat, but coming to present day, we've only added municipalities to get to the 29 that we have thus far. And so we continue to grow, and we're maybe going to add more municipalities into the mix here in the coming year, hopefully, to bring that number up. Westchester Power is what's known as a community choice aggregation program, as I mentioned before. So basically what that means is, communities like yourselves have the choice to enact home authority, home enabling law to make decisions, in regard to this specific purview around electricity supply for your residents, and basically enable this to be a default option or selection for folks for their electricity supply only. So electricity on your bill, your whole bill, right? There's electricity and gas for most people, and that's broken into supply and delivery. So Con Edison is your utility of record, and they're always going to be the ones basically who own the infrastructure, maintain it, and bill you for all of the charges. So including the delivery, which is the heavier portion of all that billing because it's so expensive to maintain that infrastructure. But what New York State allows is for the existence of other supply competitors in the market after what was called deregulation many years back, where now you have ESCOs, which you might be familiar with, that you can go out on the market and negotiate a private contract for electricity supply and get that, get whatever rate and product you want independently from Con Edison. But then this is another mechanism as well, enabled by the Department of Public Service, to allow communities, municipalities to take more control over that. So we're kind of in a way like a broker, for lack of a better word. Since we're not an ESCO ourselves, we don't technically have authority to service customers. We contract with ESCOs on the behalf of the municipalities, or you all agree on behalf of your residents for electric supply with the ESCOs that win our solicitations, rather. And so they are servicing as the ESCO of record, so to speak, for the electricity supply, but it's through our program where they're not bound to any of the contracts or other sort of, aspects of a contract that they would sign with an ESCO directly. So, yeah, I don't know. So we're basically like a broker, I guess. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And so we go out, and I'll talk about how we've done this so far. Was that the background you were looking for about the program? Was there?
Yeah.
That help.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so again, I'll talk a little bit how we actually procure these contracts and have so far, and that's what I'm here to talk about, is how that we propose to change that here going forward, and what that'll mean for everybody. So moving in from where Westchester 1.0, where we're at now, to 2.0, and building more capacity and hopefully having a deeper impact economically and environmentally for the county. So the main goal here in changing what we're trying to do is to increase supplier pool for one thing, get more competition with the market being where it's at right now. Like everything else, energy is going through the roof. So that's actually shrinking the supplier pool a bit itself, just based on squeezing people out. And then we're also, oopsie, jumping the gun, looking to build more capacity, support longer term contracts, and then, diversify what we're able to offer through the program in terms of maybe more dynamic rate offerings. Like Con Edison has different kind of rates that you can sign up for that might benefit your particular situation, things like that. For the longer term, that could be beneficial in different ways for folks. And then in turn, building more direct relationships with new suppliers and having these longer term contracts, maybe also secure long-term renewable construction project and contracts to supply and increase the amount of green energy being directly deposited into our communities. So the way we currently do things right now, the Westchester Power 1.0, I mentioned here how basically we have to work through an ESCO who acts as the retail entity for customers on our behalf. So they're the only ones who have this authority to operate in New York State, as I mentioned, and service customers. But not all suppliers are ESCOs. For one reason or another, a wholesale energy producer might not find it in their interest to be an ESCO also. So there's folks out there who are just producing energy and selling it as a wholesale product, not as a retail product like ESCOs do. So the goal here is we want to be able to tap into that wholesale market going forward to increase the supplier pool and maybe see if we can find ways to, bring costs down ultimately and expand, just our understanding, if nothing else, looking under the hood at the whole system and process for energy generation to see what we can do. So what that would mean is we have a vendor who's available to us who can offer what we call a sleeving service, basically. So we could go out, contract or award a bid to a wholesale supplier because the energy portion of this whole package is the biggest part. So we know we have this vendor who can then offer a sleeving service and basically add on all of those retail pieces, those auxiliary costs, everything that needs to get done to make it a full ESCO retail offering. So that's something we're exploring right now, and we want to explore for the next long-term contract. So for folks who don't know how we do it already, what we do with our auctions is, or for our supply contracts, is we run a reverse auction. So we have a general or a fairly precise understanding of what our capacity needs are for the whole grouping of Con Edison municipalities, Irvington, and the other 23. And we run an auction where ESCOs who have this ESCO status come to the live auction and they bid against each other in real time over different fixed price periods. And then the result of that, usually based on best price, then is awarded the contract for the services for our contract. So what we'll plan to do for the next long-term contract is also run on the same day a wholesale energy block where just wholesale energy suppliers are coming and bidding just on the energy supplied portion, not the full ESCO service. So then when we do that, we can see, okay, we can add in pretty easily. We know what our wholesale best bid was, and we can know ahead of time what our fixed cost for that sleeve service is to make it a full ESCO offering. And we can analyze, those full ESCO retail bids we got in the one auction against our wholesale auction with the sleeve service and see if we're not getting better pricing based upon that. So that's what we're looking to do here with the next full auction for electricity supply. And this little image on the right is just a visual of one of the live auctions from last time. So timeline for next steps. I mentioned the contract's ending June 30th. So right now we're actually looking at what we're, sort of putting out here to you and the other municipalities is buy-in for a short-term extension. So one of the reasons we want to do an extension is because we're still setting up the structures and systems to be able to go ahead and do that new auction and bring in the wholesale bidders for that separate possible structure that we want to move forward with. But then also there's a lot of market volatility right now, especially with Ukraine, and it was already an upward pressure in the market since the summer with rising costs. Energy was one of them, and now gas and oil are just going berserk with this new geopolitical issue. So we're seeing a lot of uncertainty, and what that means is that uncertainty is priced into the market and everything you see now. So we're hoping also like doing a 5-month extension not only gives us space to really get set up for the city structure, but also allows us to kind of hopefully float through some of that uncertainty period and have a little more stability in the market that doesn't price that in when we look to go forward with a long-term contract. So timeline is really tight for that right now. So Dan Welsh, the director of the program, he sent a note out yesterday, I think, to chief electives and admins, kind of priming you on what I'm here to talk about today, and also, set up a time and meeting to confirm an MOU price target. So in the normal structure, this is just like the normal structure ahead of a contract expiration before a new one. We determine a price not to exceed that's acceptable to all the municipalities and execute MOUs with all of them that states, if we get a bid that's underneath the price not to exceed, everyone agrees to sign a contract for that. So we'll be doing the same thing in this instance. It's not going to be as good as the rates we have now. Maybe that's obvious because of, just kind of how disparate it is where we're at now with what the realities of the market are. So we're working to get that new price right now and should have that soon, of course. And then early mid-April, we'll hope to have all of those MOUs signed and everybody on board, then go ahead and execute contracts immediately after that in mid-April with the supplier or with our supplier. And then, go through the same process. Folks who aren't familiar, we do a mailing to the residents who are eligible, and in this case, those who are already in the program, letting them know what the new contract terms are. And we do this every time there's a change in price or terms to the program. So that's a period for them to just opt out initially. Again, folks can opt out whenever they want, but this gives them the heads up and time allotment to kind of get out before the new prices hit if they want to do that. And then we start rolling in July 1st of this year with new stuff. And then you can see on the right there what we're looking for timeline for the new contract with this enhanced format. So I threw a lot at you all. I'll stop there and leave it to you all if you have questions or need clarifications. I know that was a lot, but we're basically asking in a constricted timeline, and apologies for that, to get your support on doing this extension while we look to do a longer term contract later in the year.
Questions?
No, do you have any idea what the target rate may be?
Yeah, any idea on rates?
Back of the envelope guesstimate at this point.
Back of the envelope. Wow, it might be a big envelope. Let's see. So I'm gonna just bump back to where we're at right now with rates.
Discussion.
Yeah. So these rates right now are just killer, right? No private companies offering this right now. It's a really good deal. So you can expect that it's going to go up fairly significantly from this. So it won't, be above where the market is for sure. I don't have a sense of just how much it is yet. That's sort of a dance we're having right now with the supplier to see, what we can leverage there. So yeah, you'll have to stay tuned, but we will have a much better sense of that in the very near future for sure.
But I think part of your problem,
Or 3 pickup, I'm sure. Sorry.
I think you may have a problem when you start to get this new rate out for people. Because unless you clearly explain what the, why the rates have doubled, let's say, I don't know, they're gonna double.
Oh, it
whatever the
won't
number
double.
is.
No, it won't do that. But yeah.
Well, okay, let's 50%, whatever.
Yeah.
Initial reaction, well, this isn't such a good deal. So the messaging is gonna have to really point out that they, on the other side, the free market cost of all this stuff is out of control. So without the proper messaging, you're potentially gonna have people be very reactive to the new offer.
Yeah. So, we'll be obviously trying to anticipate that, of course, we will expect that, of course, and be taking some, one, I'd love suggestions if you have any on how to specifically, get information, explanation out to Irvington residents. But, we will, in our letters, we do provide context with the market. Sorry, was somebody saying something?
I thought you said get a mailer in conjunction with the village to get the information out to everyone who's a member or of the program or available to opt into it.
Yeah, so that would definitely be very helpful. So you can see our mailing timeline here is coming up. It will be in mid-May. So when we do these mailings, we do provide some context around the market. So we'll show what Con Edison's average has been, in the recent year or whatever, and maybe in the past month or something like that. And this letter might be a little bit different because we're doing an extension rather than sort of a new long-term contract. And then, tandem to all of that, we will be putting out, as much outreach information we can. We offer community information sessions that we do through Zoom, that hopefully, people will want to attend, and maybe again, another thing that we can get assistance from the munis like yourself in advertising, putting out there so folks can come and learn about, why the rates are changing, how much they're changing and why that's happening, in the broader context of things versus just like, wow, another arbitrary 40% jump in another thing or something like that. Yeah, definitely going to be a challenge, no doubt about it. People aren't going to want to see something go from 7 cents to 10 or whatever it might be.
Well, the other thing is that, because you say the source of power is hydro, so it seems like you got to be clear about what the costs are driving the hydro rates are up.
Yeah, so both our supply options will go up. Hydro, any renewable has a premium associated to it. So the price of electricity is driven by natural gas as the predominant fuel in the market. So that's really the barometer. What forces prices up or down is the price of that. So again, you're right. If we're looking at it and really explaining the part about renewable energy as the mission point and it looking even uglier than our standard supply price, trying to really talk that out. And then we generally put information out about, if anyone were to go and shop for a renewable energy contract right now, our prices are always basically the best or near the best that you can get out there. But yeah, that all takes a little bit of explanation. Is hard to get through in just like a little flyer that might possibly go by somebody's vision for a second or something. So being able to really get in contact with folks and deliver that message is critical, of course. All the stuff.
Hey, can I ask how, I might have missed this, but how long are you thinking that your new contract is gonna be for? How? I think you said that you were gonna try to do a longer contract or something.
Yeah, so the extension will look to be about 5 months. We think that's an appropriate amount of time. Yeah, for the next one. So we solicit for various length terms, so 12, 24, 36 months and in between. So it depends mostly on what the best offer is that we get. So, these suppliers will bid on all of those different timeframes, and usually something in the 18 to 24 month range is what's ideal. So we might expect to be somewhere around 18 months again. It depends a lot on where the market is. We're really in uncharted water in so many ways with electricity right now and energy, that it's going to depend a lot on what happens geopolitically in the next months and where things are at, in a more macro sense, in a lot of ways. So it's an uncomfortable place to be for sure. So another good reason to not be locked in now, July 1st, into something long term until we kind of hopefully things shake out in the near term, 5 months in our favor, in everyone's favor, really. The world's favor.
Okay, thanks very much. We appreciate the presentation, and we always like to get the update directly from you guys. So,
Yeah,
well done.
absolutely. My pleasure. If you have questions or anything, there's info. I'm Nick at sustainablewestchester.org. Feel free to message me directly. And yeah, we'll definitely be in touch a lot over the next month plus. So thank you all for the time.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
So Brian, are you into commodities?
Yes.
Because I can't figure out why the price of natural gas affects the price of hydro.
I think it's because it's almost like they can jack it up to match. It's almost like it's not directly.
It's a market force. kind of.
Exactly right. The water is still running the same. It's not-
Well, I mean, they do have support. They've got crew and hardware.
And
equipment.
maintenance, all that kind of stuff, but, and their costs have gone up, but not like natural
Not like
gas,
that.
not like oil.
So the real value in this program, if you want to hear kind of the layman's term, is the
Nick actually said you have an answer to the hydro question.
well, I wasn't gonna answer that, but all right, hold on.
All right, you can get rid of me.
Yep.
So yeah, I think I heard the question about why gas affects the price of hydro or anything else really that's not a fossil fuel. So basically, the way that renewable energy is structured in New York State, it's a REC market. So when we offer our 100% renewable option, what that really is and why it's got a higher tick, it's an average price for a REC. So we're getting a supply contract, a base supply contract with the supplier. And then for a renewable option, they're actually matching all of that supply for our renewable with these renewable energy credits on the market. So New York State has this program called NIGATS. I can't remember, New York Generation something or other, that tracks all of the renewable energy production in the state that gets then logged and cataloged. And then when we go out and we secure these contracts and the supplier is getting these RECs on our behalf to match all of our supply needs, they're basically buying these RECs up. So they're not producing them themselves, they're buying the credits on the market that are there in this system. So that has a set price that's independent of the general supply. So it's a stacked price on top of the general supply we get from gas, from whatever that they offer us. So in some shorter terms, it's kind of a supply thing. It's just not as predominant yet until we move forward in time and more generation comes online. So then, bring that price down with more availability. So yeah, it's not actually like Constellation isn't producing hydropower and putting it on there. They're buying the credits on our behalf to represent that renewable energy. So they're buying up the renewable energy off of that market for us for our supply. Was that any more clear?
I think so, yeah.
It affects the base rate.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks again, Nick.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
no problem.
Moving on to the budget, which I think is more straightforward.
Well, can I just ask one question? Practically, if a homeowner is now contracted with Con Ed,
Contracted with,
what
that's,
if they are getting their supply from Con Ed and they want to switch to sustainable?
Right.
How do they do that?
so, right, so there's a, I mean, there's a phone number they can call. Westchester Power is who controls that, but the base question is, the only people who are participating in, who haven't made a choice
Right.
about
Right,
what
so
their
someone
electric
at some
supplier is. So
point
if someone,
opted-
if you have the default supplier, which is Con Edison, then you automatically are switched over to whatever they bid out. And the beauty of what they bid out is that it's a fixed price, which you can opt in and out anytime. So even though it's a fixed price, you don't have to, you're not locked into it for 6 months or a year, even though the rate is locked in. But you as an individual could actually opt in and opt out anytime you want.
So you can play the market.
Well, yeah, if you're interested in that, if you want to, but more important than that, at least in my experience, is that 95% of the people in this world don't understand the electric market. That presentation was a case in point. I mean, it's complicated. Who pays attention to it? I'd rather, and then you get these mailers where they say, sign up for this for, promotional rate, and then of course you don't pay attention. Paying double what you signed up for. So, and no one pays attention to that. So this is a fixed rate. It's done with all of the supply of all these communities for people who haven't made a choice to an ESCO, to a separate supplier. So they take the default supply and they bid it out on your behalf. And that's the beauty of the program. Obviously, there are times where the variable rate is less, when natural gas was a lot lower during 2021 and 20. The rates in Con Edison were actually less. But it's like asking, I mean, at the time, there were mayors and supervisors who were complaining that Con Ed's rates were less than Westchester Power. What they were basically doing is saying, I want variable rate mortgage.
Right.
I want a fixed mortgage, but I want it at a variable rate.
Yeah.
You can't have that.
Well, also,
And those same people are now complaining that Con Ed's rates are so high.
Exactly. It's all switched around. So,
and Con Ed is not renewable energy, doesn't give a renewable energy option.
right.
But the question is, what about someone like me that already has an ESCO with renewable energy?
You have to wait till your contract's up. Lose your contract's up. You can
I could
switch.
take the option. Yeah, unfortunately, I have a long-term contract at a good rate.
I do too, and I think
I'm not quite their rate, but
and it renews too, that's a problem, like, I think I missed it last time, I was trying, I said, I'll do this, and then I missed it.
I think.
Hence why you should just pay attention, let them pay attention to all that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a complicated market. I mean, maybe people understand it better
can you
than I do.
join, can you, I'm sorry to interrupt, Larry, is there an off season? In other words, if my contract is up, let's say I have a 2-year contract, which I did, but I don't know how much is left. And it's up, I don't know, pick a random date. Is there a sign up date only for this, or can you sign up anytime? Yeah, okay, good, cool. That's a
We'll
good
try to
idea.
remind each other to do it.
Yeah.
I know. It'll probably just renewed automatically.
Yeah.
No, just
Right,
kidding.
halfway into the last-
Yeah, right.
To myself.
Right. All right. So on to less complicated things.
So this now, Brenda, incorporates all of the departmental requests.
They certainly do, and then we reviewed the budget again, and made a few changes to some revenue lines that we felt could stand an increase to help out the budget. We've also taken the opportunity to distribute what we had put away in contingency in anticipation of higher energy and inflationary pressure. We distributed about almost 100,000 of those amongst the lines, so it was distributed most notably to the gasoline line. Compared to what we were paying, let's say, a year ago to now, We've increased the budget from 100,000 to 150,000. So we distributed, but it didn't really affect the bottom line because we in fact already factored that in.
Right, you just specified a certain.
We didn't know where to put it at the time. So now we have a better idea. Was that?
The gas tank.
We knew, yeah, well, it became apparent as to, just based on the past purchases and what the rate has increased, that's what we based the increase. And also we saw the impact from New York Power Authority is our supplier for electricity. We wanted to see what the impact, we were told it was going to be a 25% impact increase for January 1st. So now that we have the bills, they arrived in February, we saw the actual impact. And it certainly was that rate of increase. So we effectively had to increase the electric lines across the board.
All included now and.
Right, we had included that, and it is, so it didn't impact, right, it wasn't a
So,
surprise to
Slightly
us.
down budget.
So what we did is, Larry and I put
What are we
together,
looking at? So
the one I think Larry's gonna put on the screen.
Those,
change
yeah.
appropriations.
yes,
So this is really a boil down, pretty much a high level look at the moving parts of our budget. We had reported earlier a decrease in debt service for this coming year of 324,607. So nothing changed there from the preliminary report.
That's paying off bonds.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly
plus you didn't borrow last year, so
I didn't
that
borrow.
you didn't add any more on top.
Good.
Our salary and benefits have several components there. You can see them there, salaries and contractual health insurance. The health insurance did go up, I think by 12% in January. So that's factored in. We also have to factor in next January, because this is only from June to January, then you need January 23 in there. So that was a driving factor in the increase. Other benefits would include social security. That's just really a function of the salary increases, how much additional social security needs to be set aside for village pays. Our retirement contributions, we had noted previously, have gone down. Very much just a function of the rate. Every year they recalculate the contribution rate of the village. It's based strictly on salary and the tier that the employees are in. And their measurement period goes from April to March. So when the previous budget was calculated, March of, let's say, 2019, 2020 actually, we were at the low point of the stock market. So based on the investments of the pension system, those were factored in, and now with the rebound of the market, the rates have, as a result, gone back down. So we have about a 25% decrease.
Of the market.
Everything's
What
temporary.
happens now, who knows going forward? But they do it on a 5-year average, so a single spike or decrease is not going to impact it fully.
Get smoothed out.
So I'm just giving you some background as to how that gets calculated. So we have a net increase to salary and benefits. Of course, the general fund of 133,590. Our fuel and energy was an increase of 123,000. We were able to add in the recurring paving. That was a goal of the board over the past several years. It was eliminated last year. Well, it was eliminated.
We tried
from the
last year.
budget.
It wasn't increased.
No, but we put it then into, we did use it using surplus. So it was, so this year though puts it into the budget. Then we had our sustainability coordinator that was requested.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
40,000 seems like a low number. Is that assumed to be a part-time employee?
It definitely would be part-time. You know, part-time in our world is 17 and a half hours, so kind of,
That's not, yeah.
but it also could be a consultant too. So I mean, we're not making the decision on exactly how to execute on this. We're just trying to,
No, but I think that what I'm saying is that seems like it precludes any kind of normal salary base. I mean,
it's not a full-time salary with benefits now.
you have to be a consultant.
Was that the number GPTF estimated when they made it?
It's not a realistic number. You know that.
I guess the number was higher
Yeah, I mean, we're
based,
right. There's certain points that trigger benefits. And so we stayed within our part-time number that.
So
as a-
benefit, okay, so I just, benefits get triggered by salary number or by hours? Yeah, that's what I would think, hours,
So anything more than 17 and a half hours.
right?
Yeah, well, it's a little higher than that for benefits, but that's the number we picked for this estimate. If you know, it's determined that, you know, there's more hours that are needed from a person or a person with higher expertise than what we were assuming. I don't even know the rate we were assuming. We just tried to,
Well, the number.
we need to get a number in here to try to start the conversation.
I understand, I'm just reacting because I understand all that, Larry, and this is not really a criticism, it's just an observation, and I think that number is gonna be proved to be low, like the last time we did estimations a few years back, looking at a position, the number was low for what. You know, we were talking about trying to share with another village, if you remember at one point, like,
Yeah.
like a 50-50 kind of situation. So I think we should.
So
be
what's
ready
a
to-
more fair number?
The number was around 60, but I think they based it on, looking at what, maybe Hastings, who has a sustainability person. I'm clogging my office here. Let me just,
I think you're right on that. I think.
right, 60 sounds
it
like what
sounds-
it was.
To me, that seems like a more achievable goal than, if we're gonna do this, it seems like we should try to bring someone in who can be effective across the board, not just hampered.
So what-
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say, or like if someone were to join and have benefits and with the family medical plan, the medical plan's about 30,000. Then,
Yeah, so
So it'd be-
we would need to, we can use up the salary, but stay within the amount that's offered to trigger the benefits. You know what I'm saying? So we'd have, because we can go more than 17 and a half hours. We can go up to 29
Correct.
hours weekly
without benefits.
without health insurance being covered.
Insurance. Right,
So,
but I don't even know, you know, the civils, I don't know what position. We don't know.
I honestly, part of it for me is I haven't heard enough of, because I like, to me, it was, some would seem like, well, if there's a certain project, then we could actually bring in one person, as opposed to like a full-time person that was sitting upstairs.
That's exactly what they didn't say they thought was appropriate. They said they thought there should be someone who came in that was working sufficiently across departments to integrate, not on a one-time basis, because that's where you end up spending a lot of money and get no traction.
And wasn't there also mentioned that putting them in the right department might also be helpful, like if they were in public works or something, you know, or someone that would have a lot of.
I think working with those departments.
Working, I think they would have to be in the administrative area and working across departments. I just think probably, whatever we do, we should probably boost that kitty some.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the problem is like once you get to like, if you're gonna have someone that's fully embedded, all embedded, is a bad term.
Yeah, but that's,
Fully integrated, working 40 hours a week, it's gonna be $160,000 a year, like, because it's like with 90,000, it's gonna be almost 100% in benefits and retirement. That's like, to me, that's the part that's always the kicker. You have a comp that makes 72 grand and their total is like 123, you know, like, it's like, it just.
Yeah.
well,
And
that's,
to me, if this is gonna be something that, you know, I don't know if I believe it. I've heard a lot about, like, we need someone to do this great stuff, and I just haven't had it flushed out. You know, so to me, if you want to put $60,000 as a placeholder, that's fine, but to me, before we hired somebody, like, I haven't had it articulated to me enough, other than like, kind of talking at 60,000 feet, right? And I haven't seen a model, like, I talked to Hastings, so they kind of said, we haven't really gotten anything out of it. Well, that's what I got off the record. So I said, well, let's find it, because to me, it's always better if you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And if we can find a municipality that we can kind of copy and figure out what they did, that'd be great. I was hoping Hastings was gonna get, but
Yeah,
it almost seems like they're, you know, some of those downtown coordinators that try to work with businesses too, and it's like kind of like, I think you need to find, it's almost like Greg Allen in the theater. If you find the right person, it's gonna be a game changer.
that's the point. You gotta find, and the other thing is, frankly, our, you know, our community smart, you know,
Yeah.
the metrics and the carbon reduction planning and all of that really couple, and the sustainability impacts of that really couple into this person directly, because that could give them basically their goals.
Yeah,
And
they
they're,
can
you
get
know,
a baseline if they can work towards something.
right.
The other thing is something, I mean, I also, there are, I think the benefit of somebody too is that aren't there lots of grants that are available for sustainability initiatives that somebody who, I mean, I would envision that person, it's probably not like your full job, right, to go out there and try to find these things. And that, you know, I think the goal is a lot of those positions can almost pay for themselves in terms of grants, but
We're not saying grants funding the position, we're saying grants
No.
funding the
No, no,
activity.
Right, yeah.
Being driven by. the
Exactly.
goals. Okay.
That's the money
Yeah,
comes in, but it's not coming in, it's in other words, it's for other things, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, it's still an administrative overhead,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question, it doesn't mean
Yeah,
that the grants are not worth anything, they certainly
Right.
are, but they're gonna fund those other initiatives.
right,
So,
It
right.
might save us $500,000 in projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I didn't
it's-
think that would be worth it. But also the idea of village sharing, like, has that been explored?
It was a bunch of years ago.
Yeah.
This didn't get much interest on
I'd
it.
say it was probably at least 5 years ago, but I think we talked about, I think, at the Village Officials Committee. And it was kind of like, Hastings was interested, I think Tarrytown was, it's again, it's probably 5 or 6 years ago. But we could definitely dust it off again.
Yeah, the sharing of employees is complicated because civil service doesn't make it easy. It's just complicated. If you do it with a consultant, that's different, you know, if there's some way of
I
pooling
mean,
your resources.
might be a way to go in the sense of trying to figure out if it can make it make sense, you know, build it up over,
Because that's
build up the hours as we know. what
For
needs to be
grants, you can do for multiple municipalities, it's always more powerful too for grants. and things.
Yeah.
So it's possible, but I think we also don't want to put all our eggs in that basket in case it doesn't go anywhere again.
Right.
So I think we should at least put a placeholder in here, so it'll kind of make us work on it.
But I think to build on your point about Greg Allen, he started part-time, you know, the whole point is you work on this, you figure out, we can, like, you said we haven't done a model yet.
Yeah.
Copy, it's gonna happen.
Someone to bring them up to us.
Yeah.
Like,
Like, we don't want to start from there with $150,000
Right.
budget for full-time person, right?
Exactly.
So it makes sense to start with either a consultant or.
And it probably won't be the full year. We probably won't have them, beginning of the fiscal year, maybe, but.
Right.
Um,
But eventually you're
Yeah.
gonna work the whole thing in, so. Right, well, so we'll
Okay, can do
we'll
that.
put a,
Just give yourself some
we'll put a
breathing.
larger placeholder in there, and then we can worry about how to execute on it after this.
Exactly.
Let's get the number in there. and then we
60
can-
agreed?
Yeah.
That sounds reasonable, just it gives us some options.
There was also a request to put in a number for fireworks.
This is the July 4th.
It's July
This is not not the two fireworks.
Not the second one.
That's a one-time only.
Yeah, that's contingency budget.
Which is that second one again?
Oktoberfest, part of the 150th anniversary celebration extravaganza.
Of Oktoberfest or?
150th Oktoberfest. It feels like that sometimes.
Oh, you mean of the county?
It's 150th anniversary.
1872.
Oh.
So
Oh, sorry.
You didn't know?
I didn't. Did you?
only recently.
Yes, I saw
We-
the centennial booklet.
Yeah.
I think we have been doing a terrible job so far.
That's right.
We step up our party game.
Yeah, and the film, the little film from 1972, that was in the theater during the Irvington Day.
Mhm.
That I had, so I watched like 12 times, but
Yeah.
it was all in 1972, because that was the 100th anniversary. Nixon drove by.
Yeah.
We don't have the 150th banner on Village Hall.
We, as Arlene said, we're a little deficient in how we're celebrating, so we can.
We have to get our party
That's
game
what
up.
I'm-
I think a banner would be a good idea.
I do, I think we
Yeah.
can. Nice.
T-shirts for all the elected officials.
All right,
Who cares?
great. So we have a placeholder of 30,000.
That includes like police overtime.
That's what we figured,
Yes.
so yeah. So we said about 21, I think Joe was saying maybe 21,000 for the fireworks.
He did not give us-
He did not give me a price, no, I don't have.
He was talking with them last week.
Yeah.
His guy was on vacation, but he got back to him and said, I'll work on this. He basically held the dates. He just didn't get all the details yet. So,
And then to get the Porter Johns.
and we're hoping to get a discount. It's gonna be 2 days.
The fireworks are gonna be on July 4th.
Correct.
Okay.
But then the second.
I'm very sad about that. I won't be here.
So you have to be here September 24th.
I will be, oh, that's my daughter's birthday.
Perfect. So
I'll tell her something. My mommy birthday game will be on though.
you said you did the whole thing for her.
I will. I certainly will.
All right. Next item we budgeted for the police body cam. This is for the maintenance of the body cam. So that's in the budget.
That was expected.
That was, it was, yeah, but it had.
We just broke it out because
We
it's a
broke it out,
new
you know.
initiative.
Yeah, right.
Departmental requests, so we have recreation and parks, 76,000, but I will mention that it's offset by 18,000 in increased revenues. So then, the impact is not a total 76, 76 plus 18 revenue. DPW, $57,000 increase. Part of that, however, is also a little over 10,000 in education allowance that was increased due to the contract. I'm sorry, it was 57 for DPW, I skipped a line. DPW was the 57,000, and that too was offset by a revenue increase of almost 25,000 in our CHIPS aid from the state as for paving.
The educational allowances.
The education was for the
That's
police,
police,
yeah. We had a 10,400. It was a change in the way it's paid out to the police officers.
Is that going to, it's not just going to the top staff, right? It's going to.
No, it's of course, if all the police officers are eligible for a fixed educational stipend.
Yeah, good, okay. It's always been that way, or is it just never implemented?
No, it was newly negotiated that way. That was one of the few changes in the contract.
As far as, yeah.
All right. Library actually saw a decrease because of in their department, because retirement system and medical had decreased really significantly. They saw a net decrease in their total budget by 6,765. Insurance is up by 20,000. That's our general liability insurance. We have some other items throughout the budget of about 40,000. Some of that's inflationary, some of that's our auditor, is increasing our auditing fees.
One quick point I was gonna make, especially for you guys, but anyone listening also, is going back to the recurring paving. One thing we've been trying to do for the last 10 years plus is anything that is actually recurring, have it in the budget so we know what we're actually paying for, as opposed to like we used to have a police car that we buy one every year. And then we buy one every other year to replace it. So we wanted to get the one we bought every year into the budget. It's the same thing with the paving. We have, I think it's like 210,000 altogether.
Well, yeah, but the amount that we worked in as recurring paving was, I think, 120,000.
Yeah.
So this is our last 60 that
What
we're
we're
trying
trying
to
to do
do.
is kind of work in the amount that's recurring every year. So we're not bonding that, or paying for it when it's really something that's should be in our budget.
Right.
So it's trying to be kind of, even fiscally more responsible, but it hurts your budget this year, like it's just better to do it that way. It's just a
Yeah,
better practice.
capital projects and debt borrowing really should be for one-time projects, not for one-time large projects, not for recurring items that are relatively small.
Otherwise it becomes like those accounting tricks, and we kind of set a goal and this is the last piece that we need to
Did
do.
the last piece.
Yeah, we tried last year and
Yeah, so we
Right
tried
to
to
it.
put we didn't want to blow up our budget to say, okay, let's do the right thing for this year. It's not fair. So we kind of had faith in it. But I just want to point that out.
You're right.
Yeah. It's not an obvious thing.
We're also doing that with computers now too. So many per year as opposed to borrowing 20,000 and changing them all.
Yeah.
Kind of have to rotate
Makes
basis.
sense.
So let's get that pothole killer back out here now.
where the purchase order has been issued. So I just don't know the date yet.
Filling in back our pool.
Forget about Merriman now. let me tell you.
Yeah, no.
There's a huge problem on one of the, I think, Ardsley Road East or something, when I was coming from Washington to Broadway. Last minute, I swerved.
As we get closer to the pothole killer coming, that they'll start going out and marking them and all that. And remember that Broadway isn't ours, that you said it wasn't Broadway. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, Broadway's got some doozies, not so much for us, but our tenant. South Broadway in Tarrytown is like an axle breaker.
You take the move.
Like a permit.
Yeah, all that great written by viewers.
Terrifies the baby.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we take into account the additional amount for the sustainability coordinator, our net increase in appropriations is 333,291. So that's the bottom number there. We have some changes in revenue. Most notably, we're increasing the amount in the sales tax line by over 180,000. Mortgage tax by 50,000, building permits, an increase of 70,000. We've also reviewed the justice court fines. I think we can bring them back up to levels that we had in the past because of the hiring of the full-time parking enforcement officer and the police.
Yeah.
Right, and the traffic.
And the traffic officer, yeah.
We have other departmental revenues of about 35,000. There's items like on permits or on parking, just some adjustments across the board. Our state aid is the chips I had previously mentioned of 26,000. And then we reduced the use of our fund balance, the use of surplus. We had used 428,000 last year to balance the budget. Because of the type of year it was, we wanted to come in with a flat tax rate. And we had the surplus to do it. So we've, this budget reflects bringing it back to the amount we used to use historically of 175,000. So we feel that would maybe a good thing to do at this time. That's factored in. So what you have there is a net increase in revenues of 145,000, which is the difference then between your expenditures and revenues, which would be your levy, an increase of 168,210.
But this doesn't take the 20.
No, it doesn't.
So it's
No.
188,210.
So we'll have a change in the tax levy. I can change all the numbers, we count them.
Almost flat.
So it's still almost
Close,
flat.
yeah.
And this one was yielding,
Do
what's a slight decrease in it?
Yeah, it was slightly decreased.
Yep, a slight decrease. So it's gonna bring it closer to zero.
I mean, actually, you, hold on one second. I actually have the spreadsheet here, so
Okay.
I can share it so that everyone gets to watch.
In real time.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. All right. Small, sorry.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay.
Let me just highlight one other item, and that's actually our assessment roll.
So we're negative 20.
507 to 507. I mean, we can make it,
Yes.
wherever you want it, we can make
I know,
it.
we can back it in.
We can make an
Back it in.
adjustment if you like. Yeah, we'll make
You
a,
can tweak the reduction of surplus and then.
Negative 20.
yeah, so.
I think it's a fantastic thing in today's climate to come in with a neutral tax rate.
And, but wait, there's more.
Yeah.
We're all in the race.
Well, let me just mention that our assessment roll increased, really, it went up by over 1%. Well, it doesn't sound like a lot. It's, it is a big number, 22 million. And what it results in basically, if nothing had changed in the budget, we had last year's revenues, last year's expenditures, everything was the same. It equals about 178,000, whereby you could increase the levy with that assessment roll, and it would not increase, wouldn't impact the tax rate. So that was also a driving factor.
Yeah, definitely helps.
So one question, if I could, before we get to this, but wait, there's more. I'm just looking at this building permits number. What is that spot on? How long, I mean, remember, he didn't like, wasn't comfortable keeping on increasing it with the sense that it would always be there, so.
Right, but that increase is still so much less than the actual amount that came in. Yeah, I mean, it was something like 225, 500 came in, we're upping it to 300.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
we're
it's
still
still being very conservative.
It is conservative, yeah. So I mean, if you look back at a history of annual revenue in that department, it's probably been 5 years since we've had a number less than 300,000, and that's the number we're proposing to put it to, is 300,000. This past year, as you heard, is going to be upwards of 700 or almost 800,000, which is off the charts. We're certainly not, suggesting that that's going to have any sustainability, but 300,000, I mean, you could argue it's probably a little bit low, but I think, his concern is obviously if things tail off, that number drops very quickly. I mean, when building activity slows down, it doesn't just, go down slowly, it drops off a cliff. And that's what we've seen in the past, in 2008, 2009. I mean, you can imagine, our revenues were minuscule compared to this. So 300 is still, we think, conservative. We don't think we'll have a budget hole there in the future. But so anyway, does that.
No, that's. That's fine.
But it's hard to,
Was like,
but it's hard to keep the number down at 230 when we haven't even been under 300 in at least 5 years. You know what I mean? So it's.
You too.
Yeah, I think no, absolutely, no question. So.
but it's really bizarre that we're having so much revenue considering that we're effectively almost 100% built out in terms of where's the empty properties.
Well,
Renovations.
I think it's lots of renovation work and not.
Which gets us back to some of the issues of, we need to be looking at things about, coverage and setbacks and whatever.
Shed revenue.
That does swing.
That makes sense, yeah.
We're gonna balance the budget on that.
Pay major gold on shed and then swings. So the, and wait, there's more. Larry and I were talking about this before the meeting, we were preparing for the worst last year with the pandemic, and things actually turned out okay. I mean, especially, I think sales tax was probably the one that did much stronger than we had anticipated.
And the building permits.
And the building permits first.
I mean, we're sitting here in March of 2020 and there's zero activity
Yeah.
going on in the
No one's leaving
world.
their house, literally.
So, but that sprung back very quickly
Yeah, so
and then some.
the punchline is, we had a lot more revenue. We had, I think, less expenses as well, so we ended up having a completely good fiscal year.
But we're not at the end of it, but that's what the projection is right now.
Right,
Yeah.
fingers crossed that, so I think we don't have anything horrible in the next couple, who knows nowadays, right?
Yeah.
But, so it looks like we're gonna have another good year. We had a good year, and our, already full coffers that we were talking about is kind of an issue because you don't want to be sitting on all this money that are basically over collected tax money. So our surplus now is continuing to grow, almost more than we can spend it. Even with the crazy Oktoberfest coming up. So, Larry, one of Larry's thoughts was the conversation we had last meeting about the water department. It's municipally, it's different. There's a water department and there's the general fund, and
They're accounted for separately. Technically, they're
different people are paying.
Technically.
Keep the money is the question.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where we're going, saying that, and we had done this before, actually, we had put surplus in it because they had such a huge deficit from never raising rates and so on.
Didn't we just do that within the last year or two to zero them out?
We did.
Like 3 years ago?
3 years ago.
Is that what?
The time flies when you're having fun. So, so we did do that.
But now this new expense came up, sort of at it right.
So what we're suggesting, first of all, as Brian said, having the general fund be, healthy in terms of finances and having us feel like our water department is scraping by and we're pounding through a 7.5% increase on water rates isn't really the right way to do things. It's really an accounting thing.
And the overlap on users is probably 98% or something, it's not like there's this crazy dichotomy.
Right, there's some water customers that aren't taxpayers, and there's probably some taxpayers that don't have water.
I don't know about the second one.
Yeah, not much, but so I think the idea that we'd like to float, and we don't have exact numbers, so just want to get a sense, is we can come back with exact numbers either on Monday or even at the hearing in April. is that we calculate a number that can be transferred from the general fund to the water fund that would allow you to buffer the rates and keep them, you know, I'm not saying you keep them completely flat because that probably takes a little too much money, but keep them at 2%, you know, for this coming year.
Can you remind me our conversation last time about what we thought the rate increase would be if we didn't do this type of
We had planned on 7.5%. It actually could be a little bit higher. Some of them, we got some updated numbers from Greenberg, could be even a little higher than that. But we were going to keep it at 7.5%. We felt
Because that was kind of like
comfortable.
the crappy inflation.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
But, you know, given,
That's the same.
I mean, look, the context here is that going into last year, we planned on reducing our fund balance on the general fund side. We planned on reducing it, the 400,000+ that was in the budget. And then we used another 1+ million, about 1 million or so on capital projects to avoid borrowing. So we had anticipated our fund balance going down, you know, by 1.5 million. And we look like at this stage, because of the revenue surpluses that we have, building department's a big number, big part of that. We have about $800,000 of revenues that are higher than expected. And we have about $800,000 of expenses that are less than expected. So the 1.5 million that we expected to use is being replaced by the activities of this year's budget. So, which we didn't anticipate, to be frank. We knew the revenues were strong, the expenses look like they're coming in, you know, better than we expected. So,
What's that fund balance percentage again? I know it's always.
well, yeah, I mean,
Supposed to be. So we'd like to.
yeah, we were trying to take, the fund balance was at 6.5 million. We were trying to take that down to 5. That number is in the ballpark. We were trying to take it from 30+ down to 25%. So 25% of the overall
Just on
budget.
the high side.
Yeah, 25% is like the top end where we want it to be. Over that is excessive in our, you know, our estimation. And so we had planned it to go down to 5. It's not going down to 5. It's staying at about 6.5 or 6.6.
So how much?
Oh, and by the way, excuse me, and that doesn't even count, that doesn't even count the ARPA money.
So wait, there's more.
But that doesn't even count the ARPA money yet. The ARPA money is 663,000. And we haven't accounted for that as revenue yet because we're not allowed to.
That was the federal funds coming in to replace our revenue that we lost.
So
What?
that's
Really?
another 660,000 that is not accounted for and not spoken for. It's simply replacement of lost revenues. That's the way the federal government is terming it.
So what's the dollar amount that we want to transfer to the water?
I think if we're in the 300 to 350,000 range, we can temper the water rate increase to about 2% this year, probably close to that next year unless something blows up on that side. But I think it's probably about 300 to 350,000. That would give us a multi-year chance to keep the rates buffered.
That seems very
So we
reasonable.
can still get Brooks Springsteen for Oktoberfest.
Yeah, it doesn't, yeah,
Exactly.
it just didn't, you know, taking a step back and looking at the whole thing, it just didn't seem right. You know, if you have this, there's no Chinese wall between, you know, this side and that side, even though on an accounting standpoint there is, but it's not.
But legally, there's nothing to stop us from just.
No,
Yeah,
transferring.
You just have to be-
We're not criticizing, the state's not gonna.
You have to pass a resolution to authorize it. You can't do it
Yeah,
on
but
your own. Yes.
So,
But other than that.
I understand that you did it.
Yeah, exactly.
They're gonna be standing at the door telling us they want to pay more for the water.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what about free beer at Oktoberfest?
We should communicate that's what we're doing, and like people should understand.
Well,
Not just, I don't mean that from a PR point of view, I mean that from a public knowledge point.
We'll craft that as part of the, Brian always does a message in front of the budget, you know, to kind of outline, we'll make sure that gets worked in there.
that we can't spend it fast enough.
I don't think I put it quite that way as a journalism professor.
I guess, are there any like big capital projects that are on the horizon that, you know, we anticipate? Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, the biggest one is dealing with Firehouse. You know, that's a, that dwarfs these numbers. I mean, that's gonna be a $10+ million project at some point. there's some flood control projects that we have on the radar screen. We're obviously trying to seek out grants, through FEMA for that, but at some point, those projects are gonna need to get done. So, there's probably several $1 million in flood control projects as well. Then there's what to do with the DPW, which is, these are multi-year questions. I don't have the answers for you.
Yeah.
But,
You mean the physical location of DPW?
yeah, the facility itself is inadequate. It's probably not located in a place where you'd want to put a facility like that. It's valuable
Residential.
Right, it's valuable real estate next to a train station for us. That's how much more valuable than it gets.
Anyone from the DPW takes the train to get there.
So there's, but where's it go? Public works facilities, you look over at the village of Ardsley, what they're spending on theirs, it's a $15 million project.
Where do they put it?
I forgot.
They told us.
Yeah, I think it started as a $12 million project and it's
Yeah.
succeeding 15 now. So
Yeah,
it's,
it was 16.5.
so those are big projects. Now, does this help with that? Not really. Those are gonna have to be borrowed for clearly. But to the extent that we can use current day funds to offset any of our borrowings right now, we have obviously ongoing capital projects that are not of the same scale. And to the extent that we can avoid borrowing now, that'll give us much more flexibility down the road to borrow and still have room to borrow and room to fit it in the budget.
It's also, as rates start to increase now too.
Right,
Yeah,
that's the thing.
I'm hopeful actually that we can probably get our rating up to, AAA potentially or something.
Well, we're one notch below AAA.
And they basically, the last time we were probably qualified for it, but they can't move you up more than a certain number without it really raising red flags. So, that'll help us borrow cheaper on this as well. So
Yeah,
it's just, we weren't complaining about having all this extra cash, but it was just like something we wanted to consider and figure out what's the most prudent things to do with it. But I agree with the capital projects, and I think some of the smaller capital projects, like we did last year. We'll continue to look to that, especially if we have another surprise or, there's another giant project with
There's
the
like
building
equipment.
department or something, yeah.
A lot of equipment, DPW equipment.
Yeah, all of that will be considered for using that for this year again. We'll have that
Yeah.
discussion down the road.
Yeah.
When we start dealing with the
Capital
capital.
budget, usually June.
It'll be
We'll start
hopefully May.
Yeah.
We'll be working on it, but hopefully you'll be dealing with it in May.
So this got me thinking, the thing about the water department, though, it was in. The thing about the Rumbrick station, is that a one-time payment
It's,
to
no,
balance out we're paying.
The rest of them.
we're gonna pay for another 15 years on that.
Right,
or
okay.
Whatever, what, I forgot the exact schedule.
And how much was it a year extra?
160,000.
Right.
Yeah, but it's,
Amazing, I remember that.
there you go. It kind of stands out.
Yeah.
So how does this pay in?
Well, we're gonna take,
That helps for two years maybe, but not further, right? We'd still get hit.
right, but we're gonna wean ourselves off of it. So what's gonna happen is we're gonna take a number determined, but let's say it's 150,000. We're gonna take that. We're gonna take that in the water fund and use it to temper the rates this year.
Yeah.
Next year, if we want to keep rates completely flat,
Yeah.
and everything else stays the same, we need to use another 150,000. We're not suggesting that we're gonna do that. What we'll do is this year we'll use 150,000, next year we'll use 100, and the year after we'll use 50. And we'll wean ourselves off of it so that we can smooth the rates in. And eventually, the 160's got to get worked into the budget and be
Right.
supported by the water rates.
Right.
We just don't need to do it all in 1 year. That's the issue. So we can use some of this number to be calculated, transfer it over,
Okay.
start
I
appropriating, and
understand.
wean ourselves out.
Just making sure that's what you were saying. 'Cause
That's a
there's no
concept.
magic.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty common technique that we use all the time, to try to, we've talked about this before, where you look at a history of rates here, and if you reacted to everything that changed in the budget, this budget here, frankly, if we really dug into it deep, you might be able to bring it into a 2% decrease in your rates. I'm not suggesting that should happen. In the future, when the rate maybe should have been 4%, we can try to keep that in the, much more smooth, it's just all time, as opposed to having 10% increases one year and 5% decreases the next year. And
Yeah,
It's-
I mean, I think it's also one of those things where you find out that we have this, sustainability coordinator is gonna be amazing, but it's gonna be $100,000. But we're all convinced we find it, like that's when you say, that $300,000 from, the building department, make it 310 and make you find things and I think that's kind of the magic that happens at the end. It's almost like you see how it feels overall, and then you tweak it to make it all work in the end. Along with our goals, and like the things that we prioritize.
Not trying to count chickens before they hatch or whatever, but assuming that. Oh, I don't know what I can say. Is it public knowledge about the purchase of the property?
North River?
Yeah,
I mean, we haven't announced it, but they.
but it's in the world. It's
They're
like,
going to be speaking to the housing committee, yeah.
so, I mean, that's going to be a large commercial development now. Would that be, that's a significant building revenue right there, isn't it? Who knows what time frame? But
Right, and who knows what concessions you'll be asked for to be supportive of affordable housing.
right, okay,
So,
Gotcha.
there's a lot of moving parts.
yeah, okay. So,
And even taxes going forward, I think that was part of the discussion of putting a pilot in place, payment in lieu of taxes as opposed to straight out tax calculation based upon value of the development. So there's other ways to support affordable housing and they involve money, so you'll,
so we got to pay up somewhere.
well, you don't have to, but I think you may want to. Yeah, no, right.
What we want to do.
Exactly, right. But there's there's still incremental tax revenue there. You know what I mean? It just may not be a windfall.
But I was thinking, building permit revenue sounds like it would be pretty significant.
There can be some, yeah.
All right, well,
Right, so we're-
team, thanks so much for your budget.
Yeah.
We're,
Thank you
as
so
always,
much.
in Larry.
So are we gonna continue this on Monday? What's the?
Well, we have to come, the tentative budget needs to be filed with the village clerk. So Brenda files it with herself on the 20th, so the 21st, Monday. So we will take what we heard here, convert it into a budget, and it'll get filed without any of your involvement. At that point, there's no more discussion about the budget. I mean, you can talk all you want, but there's no more changing it from March 21st until the date of the public hearing, which will be the first Monday in April. And when you have that hearing in April, we'll present the budget as it looks. You'll have a copy of it. You'll see it. You can talk about all you want, but you can't change it. On the date of the hearing is when you can change it. And so if there are changes that you want to make to it, go for it. If you hear from the public and you want to make a change, that's fine. But you need to adopt it by the end of April.
So we're not getting our pay increase then.
We gotta bring it up on the day of the hearing.
You can vote on it. Well, you do it now and then we'll get it in for Monday.
Sure.
All right.
Are these things running? Are the filters running right now?
They've been running all day, but that's not what those are supplemental.
Those are,
We have air circulation in this room that exchanges constantly.
I really, it's been improved.
Has it? Yeah. Oh, yeah, it has.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was done last summer.
At this point, is there any change in the water rate to reflect what this, any part of this discussion? Do I bring it down to a 2?
I think our target is to.
Two, okay,
Yeah,
so
so we just have, we have to,
Modifying.
we have to work on the numbers to make that work. Yeah.
That's what I'll do.
I mean, I gave you the range of what we're talking about, but we'll fine tune it.
Between, around 2-ish, give or take.
Yeah.
So with all that being said, thanks again, and I will make a motion to adjourn to executive session regarding personnel matter in the police department.
Thank you.
Have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you, Brenda. and Larry.